Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Motorsport Experience podcast. This is another episode where we explore the passion for motorsports. This podcast is created by enthusiasts for enthusiasts, where I try to share and spread the passion that we have for the sport. And here in Canada, specifically, it's a rather small sport. So we try to support each other, we try to inspire each other. And the best way, in my opinion, is through stories, through personal experiences, and really shining light on what it is that people do in that sport when most of it can't be really observed or seen unless you're doing it yourself. So, in this episode, we have a guest, Rose, and I will let her introduce herself. And we'll go and explore what is her experience of motorsport is. So, Rose, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Well, my name is Rose, and I was born and raised in a small town called Noelville, Ontario, which is located about 45 minutes southeast of Sudbury. So if you're familiar with Sudbury, I grew up around that area, currently living now in Temagami, Ontario, which is about an hour north of North Bay on Highway 11. So I'm from and live and from Northern Ontario. Again, Temagami, a small town, a small, quiet town, lovely place. I'm a mining technologist, and I started riding dirt bikes. It actually started out with ATVs back in 2005, 2006. I actually took a year off between high school and college because I wasn't too sure what I wanted to do in terms of applying for college and university. So I was working like a full-time student job, still living at my parents' house and saving up money for college. And there were a bunch of guys in the area that had these race quads, and I was like, wow, that looks like so much fun. I wanted to hang out and ride with the boys, so I ended up getting myself a race quad. So that's basically my introduction into power sports. And I didn't switch to two wheels until I met my husband Jeremy in college. So in 2007, 2008 is when I would have made the switch over to two wheels. And from 2009 to 2014, I did a really solid stint of racing, mostly cross-country racing. The World Enduro Canada Series, the WEC it was called. I believe it doesn't exist anymore in Ontario. Now it's mostly Off-Road Ontario. But I did a solid, I'd say at least 4 years of solid cross-country racing, attending basically every event I could, and building my racing resume. And in 2014, I ended up getting ill from the Epstein-Barr virus. There was a lot going on in my life at the time, a little bit of trauma, moving to a different city, a breakup, and I ended up getting ill. I wasn't taking good care of myself. I fell ill from the Epstein-Barr virus, also known as mononucleosis. And for most people, it's almost benign. I think by the age of like 12, most people have had it already, but for some reason, I ended up getting it at the age of 26. And the later on you get it in life, generally the more severe it will be. And I was in a very stressed state. Like I was saying, there was just a lot going on in my life and I wasn't taking care of myself. So it ended up consuming me, unfortunately. So from 2014 to about 2020, so 5, 6 years, I struggled with post-viral chronic fatigue, just an unexplained fatigue that just wouldn't go away from getting the virus. So I quit dirt biking entirely from 2014 and didn't get back on until 2020. And something miraculous happened in the springtime of 2020. I decided that it was time. So during my illness, I had a lot of time on my hands. Obviously, I was for like the first year, I was extremely fatigued and barely left my house. Luckily, I had a job working remotely from home, so that helped out a lot. I was still able to work for the most part, provide income, but at the same time be at home and rest. So from 2014 to 2020, I did a lot of healing and self-exploration work. And in 2020, something amazing happened. I said, you know what? It's time. I need to get back on my dirt bike. And I went through a very strange period where during that time, I had no interest in dirt biking. I had to grieve, the athlete in me was totally gone. I was for a long time in a victim mindset, feeling sorry for myself. Why did it happen to me? And through doing a lot of inner work, and it sounds kind of corny saying this, but like my spiritual journey really awakened something inside me, and for the longest time, I had this little spiritual ego going on too. I was saying, you know what, dirt biking it pollutes the environment. I'm a spiritual person now. I'm never gonna dirt bike ever again. But it's hilarious. I've sort of went through all of these phases, and eventually in 2020 I emerged finally and decided to get back on my bike. And now, third season in, post illness, I guess you could call it, I'm dirt biking again, and I'm better than I've ever been. Like, I still have my health struggles, and I think that'll be my kryptonite for the rest of my life. But it is my story, and I wouldn't change a thing. I'm super grateful that everything happened the way it did.
I just love that story. That is incredible. And funny enough that I also got into motorsports in 2007, and I sold my bike originally, and then I got a new bike in 2020 as well. So that wasn't a dirt bike, it was a street bike. But really interesting correlation. 2020,
yes.
when everything was going down, I thought, oh my
Yes.
goodness, the world is ending and I don't have the bike. This situation had to be rectified. And it's funny how it is for you too. And there is a thing that is called post-traumatic growth. So it sounds like what you have experienced could be that aspect where we come out of some kind of difficult situation, different person, and we start appreciating life in a different way. So from 2007 and until now, what has been your most memorable involvement in a motorsport? Was there one race that you remember most, or one event?
There isn't anything pre-illness that I could really pinpoint, because most of my experience pre-illness was cross-country racing. So they're 2 hour, 2.5 hour motos, they're laps. So you sort of memorize the terrain. So it's not that it's easy, but it's relatively easy. It's an easier format to work with. I would say that my attempt at the corduroy enduro last year, so in 2021, I attempted to race the corduroy enduro for my very first time. So like I said, I had never done enduros before. It was mostly cross country and motocross. So last year was my very first true enduro, and I decided to race the pro class. And I totally got annihilated. But I learned so much. And now this year I am back at it. I'm going back for round 2, and I'm going in with the mindset of finishing. So I'm stoked. I'm nervous, but let's do this.
Oh, absolutely. It's not the failures that really get us. It's those moments where we fall down and then we get up and then we remember. And that's what keeps moving us forward, because failure is inevitable, especially in motorsports.
Absolutely.
But I'm curious to know, what is your perception and what is your perception of the meaning of the motorsports and bikes before illness, after the illness, overall, when you have gone through the transformation that you have? What does it represent for you?
That's a good one. I think pre-illness, I was definitely doing it for the wrong reasons. I think I was doing it to maybe prove myself, and I was not knowingly doing this. I think it was a subconscious pattern that I was sort of acting out, sort of like, hey, look at me. I'm a good person. I placed first place. I placed first place. I made the podium. I am a good person. And I was sort of maybe going at it from that undertone, and it comes from like a lack of worthiness, like I'm not worthy enough, and always seeking approval from other people. Now, post illness, and having gone through, I guess you could say, some level of spiritual maturation, I'm totally doing it from a different heart space. I'm really utilizing enduro in order to up level myself as a human being, because for me it really is an opportunity, or maybe I could say, let me reword this. Enduro really offers all of my insecurities on a silver platter. So instead of running away and staying in my comfort zone, I'm using this sport to become a better person, because every time I go out there, I'm like, ooh, this is something I need to work on. This is a little trigger of mine that I need to overcome. And it's basically a giant mirror for me. And I see all of my insecurities come up, and I'm like, okay, I need to work on these instead of running away from them. And I just face them head on. And I'm really coming from a more love filled space. And I think pre-illness, I used to be in competition with others. And this is a hard one. As much as I'd like to say that I'm not doing that now, it's a daily struggle, and having a lot of self-awareness when I am comparing or competing against other women, fighting for the spotlight, or that competition. So now I am doing it for me, to become a better version of me, than what I was yesterday. I'm always striving to be a better person every day. And this sport really allows me to put that into practice.
I love this. I love this so much for many reasons. And one of them is because sports in general put us into that receptive state where we are able to see a lot more different facets of ourselves. And this also makes me think back to the days of ancient times when, according to the mythology, the Greek had the Olympic Games, and everybody stopped what they're doing just to participate or just to watch, because it was important, because it was meaningful. There was a deep, some kind of a, like, if you're stopping a war in order to have a sport event, it means tremendous amount of something. And so right now, where we have sports of all kinds, and I'm looking only at the motorsport as a sport, because for me personally, it has meaning. And what I see is that the people who participate, it also has tremendous meaning for them, but it might not be visible to others. And that is another reason why I'm doing this podcast, to kind of bring forth the deeper reasons and meanings of the sport, and how it motivates us to grow, and how it inspires us to become different people. All of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so with all of that said, how do you see yourself in that sport? Let me just phrase that. It's such I just love this concept so much that it's almost too big to grasp. I had another conversation with another person who is flying helicopters, and she was saying how much spiritual aspect there is in flying. And so you have gone through the spiritual journey of healing, and so you already see that there is something in there. Do you think there is more to the sport than meets the eye?
Absolutely. It's what you make of it, really. Because I could easily fall into, again, like, let's say, that comparison trap and doing it for the wrong reasons. I think having a lot of self-awareness is key, and knowing, just knowing that when you're doing it for the wrong reasons. It's very interesting. I find with social media, it brings out a lot of that in people. You can see it on social media when people are doing things for Instagram and it's very hard. Like every day I open my news feed and I'm constantly asking myself this question, like, if I'm going to post something, am I posting, you know, is this my ego basically posting, or am I posting, is this my soul trying to, express itself through this platform? And it's a constant daily, reassessment that I have to do, because it's so easy. You open up social media and people are doing all of these great things and this and that. And it's very easy to fall in that, that comparison mindset and that fear of missing out. So I think I think the sport really has evolved with social media too, because when I used to race back in 2009 to 2014, I didn't even have a smartphone. I didn't know what that was. I was older when I got a smartphone. I think Facebook was just starting out. I didn't have Facebook, or if I did, I had like one picture up on Facebook. So I didn't get on social media until 2020. I opened up Instagram, post illness. I'm just getting back into dirt biking, and there's this thing called Instagram that I can use on my phone. What is this? And then I started, posting pictures of me dirt biking and posting this and that. And it's been a very interesting journey for me to navigate this terrain, I guess you could call it, because it's very easy to fall into that trap of doing it for the gram. And for me, every day, it's a constant realigning of myself. Like I could easily veer off and do certain things that are not necessarily in my highest good or in my best interest. And I'm constantly having to, realign myself and making sure that I'm doing it from a space of love, a soul-filled way, I guess, of living, and not acting through impulses or insecurities or ego. So I don't even know if that answers the question, but that is sort of the thought process that popped up from your question.
No, that's beautiful. And I love it so much, because I also strive for alignment all the time, especially with this podcast. Like, where do I see the most value, and how can I really extrapolate it and share with people? So it definitely makes a lot of sense. And so personally, when I ride the bike, and I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of being in the zone or
Yes.
flow state. Okay,
yes.
So let's
Coulter.
talk about the
Yes. I saw you posting stuff about like that came from him, and I'm like, oh yes, she knows.
Yes, let's talk about that, because
absolutely.
that has, so for me, I used to just look for experiences like that for the longest time without knowing what they were called. And eventually I read his book and I discovered the terms. And I went on a whole journey of learning all about it. And now it makes so much sense why we do things we do. So if you're familiar with the term flow state, I'll explain a little bit for the listeners if they don't know. Flow state is essentially a state when we perform our best and we feel our best. And it can be measured and tracked by science. So it's almost like a technology within ourselves. We're evolutionary designed to have that. And we're always seeking those experiences. We call them being in the zone, being in the pocket. Jazz musicians call it being, I don't remember what they're called, but being in the pocket.
I think it is
unconscious.
The pocket.
Being unconscious for this basketball players, the zone. It's, everybody knows what it is. Everybody experienced it, and they always want more. And it's highly unique and individual. And so for me, I discovered that with motorsports, and that for me personally, it has always been when I put my helmet on, the whole world disappears and I just become super focused. What has it been like for you? What was the discovery like? How do you perceive it now?
So I think flow states for me on a dirt bike sort of came later on, when I built up enough skill level that and this will vary depending on the trail that I'm riding. If I'm riding a really easy trail, I'm not going to get in a flow state because it's going to be boring, because I'm one of those. I love going fast. I'm a little bit of an adrenaline junkie in that sense. And if I ride a trail that's too hard, it requires too much of my logical brain to sort of figure out my next maneuver. It's difficult. It's painful. So I'm not necessarily going to get into that flow state. So for me, like my trails back home, I know which trails where I sort of weave in and out of that state because it's just at a perfect level of difficulty that it keeps me on edge, but it's not too difficult that it snaps me out of it, if you know what I mean. So I don't always get into those flow states. It really depends on the trail. And I think also my mood that day. If I had a really hard day at work, sometimes it's a little bit harder to unplug. And there are moments where I'm just in that zone and it's like time stands still. Everything is beautiful and it's absolutely amazing. So I love getting into the zone. Yeah, it's rad. I totally understand why extreme sports enthusiasts do what they do because it's such an amazing feeling. And I sort of also get that with my meditation. I do feminine embodiment. So I don't do the stillness meditation. I do something that's called, I guess what I do is I sort of dance and I move my body and I put music on and I sort of move according to different archetypes. So sometimes I move, I'm expressing the lover in me, or I'm moving like the athlete and I'm just in the zone and I'm moving my body depending how I feel that day. And I actually get into those, I guess you could call them flow states or that zone when I'm in that sort of moving meditation. So I get it on the dirt bike, so via action sports, and I also get it, when I'm doing my meditation. And it's just it's a beautiful, beautiful feeling. It's almost like something else is flowing through you. It's hard to explain, and is doing the moving for you, and you're just like you're just like the, I guess, the observer. It's a very, very cool feeling. You get to experience it all.
Yeah, it's called energy. Energy is moving through
Yes,
you. And
yes,
I
yeah,
love the fact that you mentioned moving meditation and archetypes. I work
yes,
with archetypes a lot. And once again, for the listeners, those who don't know, there's four main archetypes. It's a lover, king, magician, and warrior. And we all have them and we all express them in different ways. But the main thing that they relate to the moving meditation and the bikes is the embodiment. The
mhm,
embodiment aspect is one of the triggers that really activates that flow state, the being in the zone, because we get feedback from our bodies. And our body is there for a reason. This physicality in this three-dimensional world, even though we're spiritual beings having this momentary existence on earth, but the body serves a purpose.
mm,
And for me, I realized a while ago that bikes provided that opportunity to do
mm,
the moving meditation, especially the
yes,
dirt bikes. When you're on it, you're getting feedback immediately. If you're on the road, it's pretty much straightforward and there's less of that. You still get wind in the
yes,
face
yeah,
and vibrations,
yes,
not
yeah,
not the same as on the trail, but it's all comes back to the moving meditation. And for me, it's very similar to you. I'm having very hard time sitting still for meditations. I need
yes,
to move. I
yeah,
need to get the energy moving through me, and I need the sound. So all of that combined, it's really expression of our full self in this
yes,
reality. And
it
that's how
is.
it relates to bikes, because it creates then a spiritual experience on the trail, on the bike.
It does. And what I find really interesting is that everybody sort of has a different, not necessarily, or yeah, I guess a different technique or a different posture or a different way they ride their motorcycle. We're all sort of unique. And it's really interesting to watch people dance on their motorcycles. Just like an example, my husband, Jeremy, he's an ex freestyle motocross guy. And when I met him, I was like, I fell in love right away. I saw him on his motorcycle. He is like one of the most fluent guy I know on a motorcycle. He is so playful. It's just so joyful to watch him ride. And it's really interesting how everybody has their own little unique way of riding their motorcycles. I guess, like you're saying, we're sort of all expressing ourselves in this physical body, riding our motorcycles, which is really, really an interesting concept. It's kind of far out there. but it's almost like that energy moving through us. Like for him, the playfulness, the joy, the adventure, right? It's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And I saw a funny meme somewhere on the internet where it says motocross pants for girls is the same as what yoga pants are for guys. It's the we are just excited to see each other perform on those bikes. And when you recognize another person doing that, it's instant connection because it's very similar mindset, very similar passion, and it's almost like similar vibration, I guess. So it pays a lot to kind of keep that in mind, that we are prone to experiencing things in similar ways within the sport itself.
Yes.
And that's just there's so much multitude of variety of experiencing with that. And so my next question would be, what was your focus like? So the flow state is a state of focus. Last year you did corduroy enduro and it was not the best experience. What was your focus and your flow state was like then?
So during the corduroy enduro, I had zero focus. I was very scatterbrained and couldn't get my flow for a multitude of reasons. Going into the event, I think I had an unconscious belief that I wouldn't finish. And of course, I houred out on day 2, my last test. So I didn't get my finisher's medal, which is totally fine. I've made several mistakes. I did a very poor tire choice, front and rear. And last year they had a tremendous amount of rain. So there was a lot of mud, and I was running a rear tire that was more designed for rock, which worked well at home, but did not work well in that kind of terrain. The knobbies were too close together, and I would just get a mud slick compact into the tire, and it wouldn't empty itself out. So I was, slipping and sliding all over the place. I had made the decision to run a tubeless. I was running tubeless in the back, which I was already used to. I had made a decision to run tubeless in the front not very long before the event, because changing a tire for me, like if I was to get a flat, it's not going to happen. I'm going to hour out. So in order to prevent that from happening, I wanted to run the tubeless because it's a much simpler system. If I can run it flat, worst case, and make it back, or I can put a plug in it, which is really quick. So it made me feel a little bit more independent in that way. But the bike handled very, I did not like the feeling of the tubeless in my front tire. So that played a lot with, so having really poor tires, front and rear, played a lot with my mental, and it made things a lot more difficult. And my stamina, because like I was saying, in 2020, I decided to ride dirt bikes again. Well, I had, from 2014 to 2020, I basically didn't do any physical activity. I did nothing. I went through a period of like, I did a lot of health protocols to get my health back up and running, detoxes, all sorts of interesting protocols that have really, really helped to heal my body, and then the spiritual journey. So by 2020, I was in a state called skinny fat. So when I first started dirt biking, again, I couldn't ride for more than half an hour at a time. If I dropped my bike, I couldn't even pick up my bike. I was lacking so much muscle. I had zero endurance, and it was actually I struggled to get going again. It was difficult because I was still sort of attached to my pre-illness days as an athlete, and having lost all of that and having to start over again. Yes, I could carry over some of the skills that I had previously, but I had zero muscle tone and zero stamina. I had to start from scratch. So so by 2021, I decided to race the Corduroy Enduro, which is Ontario's hardest dirt bike race or off-road race. And I decided to enter the pro class, and it was very, very difficult. My stamina, my endurance, my mental grit wasn't quite there to finish the event. I do feel like I have the skill. There was nothing there that I couldn't ride. I rode trials in 2012 to 2014. I did a year of competitive trials. So I have very good technique. I don't want to toot my own horn, but that's something I do love working on is my technique. But I just didn't have like riding 150 kilometers roughly, I'd say like, let's say between 130 and 150 kilometers times two, because you got to do it Saturday and Sunday. I had never done, even pre-illness, I had never done anything like that before. So I sort of threw myself into the fire and I wasn't prepared. So I did many, many things wrong that weekend. But I've got to say, I've come a long way because my old self, pre-illness, if I would have done that and not finished, I would have been so hard on myself. I would have been depressed for weeks, maybe even a month after the event. And I would have been, you know, I should have done this, I should have done that. And then comparing myself to the other women and blaming, well, she, you know, is, you know, privileged in this way. And she, pointing the blame, redirecting it at other people instead of, you know, hey, I failed, but you know what? I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do it until I succeed. So this year or last year, having DNF'd, I was like, no big deal. I'm just going to try again next year. And that is huge because that's not the typical reaction from me, but that's the reaction I had. So obviously I'm doing something right. I wasn't even upset about it. I tried my best. It was all good. We're just going to try again next year. And here I am this year, 2 weeks away. I'm back at it. I honestly feel like this year I'm going to finish. I've got so much more going for me. I have a better bike, more stamina, better skills. Obviously, I've been putting in a lot of seat time this year. I've been working a lot on my hard enduro skills, which is making me a lot more independent on my bike, and also having the proper technique saves a lot of energy. And I'm not a powerhouse now that I've had my illness. So anything that can save a little bit of energy for me is a bonus. And I definitely have a stronger mindset. So this year, I'm really going in there to finish. But again, if I don't finish, so what? It's just the cord anyways. I'll do it next year. You know, like I'm not going to beat myself up over it. And I'm going to try again until I finish.
That attitude is huge. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because it's such a tremendous difference to go from the victim state, victim mentality, and blaming and self-blaming to the opportunity for growth. I had to deal with that myself and work on my relationship to failure, just like this in working with business and starting my business. It's exactly the same thing. And the only thing that gets us going is this kind of reduction of importance of something, because the more importance we place on something, the harder it's going to become. And yeah, and from what it sounds like, the flow state was not possible for you last year because it was too much stress. When we have too much stress, when we have too much things that are not working in our favor, the challenge skill ratio is what they call it, gets skewed towards challenge. And even though it's perceptual, you can never really exactly measure challenge, skill, whatever, it's all kind of in our head, but the mindset and perception plays a huge deal. And so is this year looking better for you from the terms of perception and preparation, as you mentioned already, a lot of aspects of it?
Yes. And I think taking action, like so this year I've been doing something every day to prepare for this event. And it could be something as small as preparing a healthy meal with wholesome ingredients. You know, every day I try to make the best choices I can. And it really is a daily effort. And for me, having had the whole chronic fatigue, it's small daily actions, but over time you build momentum. And I definitely have more momentum going for me this year, and that'll play out in my race in 2 weeks, definitely. Unless something bad happens, like I break down or I get injured, I definitely feel like I sh- I don't know if I should use the word should. I definitely feel like I can and I will finish. But again, it's both and. So I'm not really fixated on the results and the accolades. So again, if I don't finish, I don't think I'm going to be overly upset. I've gone through it again with I've gone through that last year, and I had a really, really good mindset, and wasn't so hard on myself. So I'm going in full force, but no attachment to the outcome. So it's like both going in, giving it all I got. But at the end of the day, if I fail, I'm just going to learn from it and try again.
I love it so much. It sounds like you've been reading all the personal development books out there.
Yes.
It just sounds exactly how the message is circulating out there. Full involvement without attachment, letting go, all of those things. It's amazing. And I had previous episode, and I had Etienne Jelina on the episode, and his goal is to go to Dakar races in a couple of years, and so he is training all the time for that. And it sounds like that kind of goal is what really something bigger than ourselves, something challenging, something that is so much out there that will continue pulling us forward with every daily action, with a constant movement towards that, and all the attention is placed on that goal without the expectations or without the attachment to really doing it. And so does that sound like it's something bigger than yourself, this corduroy enduro?
It is I'm it's funny. My husband the other day, he's like, do it for the pain, not for the fame, because there's just something so good about putting yourself in a very uncomfortable situation. That was the corduroy enduro for me last year. The whole experience from start to finish was very uncomfortable for me, but that's where you learn and that's where you grow. And having had, again, my illness and chronic fatigue, I am a sucker for gravitating towards comfort and safety and security. I'm like, because, oh my goodness, if I exert too much energy, my health is gonna diminish again, and I'm gonna, experience some low energy at levels. So it's very interesting. I have this thing where I need to overcome. I'm terrified of overdoing it and then falling ill again, because for me, it's a constant battle, and it's gauging how much energy to put into it and not to overdo it where I can, what's the proper word for that? Fall back on my progress. And it's walking that fine line, and doing like those small incremental actions every day, and they build momentum. And one thing that I didn't have at the corduroy last year is momentum in general. It was my first, like, what I should have done, but I didn't have the means to, is attend several races throughout the season so that I can build momentum, like race momentum, and not just ride my trails back home. So I went in to this corduroy enduro, which is like basically the biggest event of the year in Ontario, without having built any sort of race momentum. So it was like, whoa, it was a lot to take in. I definitely did not get into the zone at all that weekend. I was a nervous wreck and constantly struggling to keep on time. because it is a timed event. If you fall back more than an hour, you're basically disqualified. So I struggled the entire weekend just to stay afloat. It was difficult, very difficult. So I'm a little bit nervous again this year, but I'm going in with more confidence and knowing that I have everything I need in order to finish. And I've done everything I can. I've done everything I can. I've been putting in the work. So.
Yeah, of course. It makes sense because overtraining is real. Burnout is real.
It is.
And especially since you experienced that illness, it's definitely a justifiable fear to fall back on the ways and let the health kind of undo all the progress. So it's totally understandable. And another thing that I like to often share is that recovery is necessary for when we are doing activities that get us into the zone, get us into the flow state.
Absolutely.
The recovery is so paramount, not only for the body, but also for the brain, because the brain is what makes everything happen. That's where our mind is. That's how we make decisions. And if we engage too much with something and there's overtraining and burnout and there's not, and too much flow, and not enough recovery. Next time going into it, we're not going to have sufficient amount of neurochemistry to get us into that same focused state. So it is a fine line. That's the whole thing about the being in the zone, being in the flow state. It is constantly living on the edge and not going over.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's very strange. It's a fear of I have a really big fear of depleting myself again, and it's part of my journey. It's why I'm here. It's something I need to work on and overcome. I'm learning so much about myself. You know, that's why I love riding dirt bikes. If you go all in, it really gives you an opportunity to work on yourself. It's amazing.
Absolutely. I just got into dirt biking recently because I discovered it. Yes. I don't know how I was missing it. Yes, I was in a motor race and I was in a road paved circuit for many years. I raced cars once. I worked with cars. I rode motorcycle on the street, but I kind of missed out on the whole dirt biking aspect. And when I finally got to it, I couldn't believe how much growth it provides, how much opportunity for development of self it provides, because I got on some challenging trails and there were hills that I've never seen before, never knew how to take them, and I started doing them just because, well, what are you going to do, go backwards? You can't, you have to go forward. There's no way not to do them. And through that, realizing that you can, realizing that the machine can, and the merge of the man and the machine, which I talk about all the time. So let's talk about what it feels like for you, the merging of the man and the machine.
Oh man, when you feel at one with the bike, it's amazing. And I think I experience that when I'm in that zone, that flow state. I'm sort of just beep bopping on the trail, and it's very bizarre. It's like I'm using the terrain to, propel myself off of. It's like a weightless feeling, almost effortless, but there's just enough features to sort of keep you, entertained and a little bit on edge. I love it. And on a more practical note, feeling at one with the bike, I highly suggest learning how to ride a trials bike. And you don't even need a trials bike. You can learn all of those techniques on a regular dirt bike. It's funny because a lot of people say, hey, you should get a trials bike. And I'm like, yeah, I totally had one, for a few years, and I rode trials. They're like, oh, and I'm like, I'm still riding a trials bike. I don't have one, but I'm still riding my bike the same way that I rode my trials bike. And when you start implementing those techniques, you really become more, in a physical sense, you really become more at one with the motorcycle. So applying, refined technique and accessing those flow zones or those flow states, that's like the golden ticket right there. Something I'd love to be able to do all the time, but
Yeah, I totally hear you. And I actually, I did ride the trials bike for a brief moment, and
yes.
I realized that it's actually harder to do stuff on the dirt bike than it is on the trials bike. It's something to do with gear ratio, maybe torque,
Mm,
maybe power. But actually, if you want to learn better control, I would say for myself, it's learning to do it on a dirt bike
yes,
because it has less, it gives you less, so you have to do
yes,
more.
yes,
Trials bike kind of gives you more, so you don't have to do
yeah.
much. It gives you more kind of aspects. It helps you more, but the merge of man and machine was so incredible because I had no idea that the bike could go over boulders, over
Oh,
roots, over hills like that. I had
amazing.
no idea. And I had to
Amazing.
trust. I had to come to the point of trusting the machine, the suspension, and the
Yes.
tires to go over that. And a couple of times after, it was merging because I
Mm,
knew that the machine could do that. The machine could
yes.
support me in that. And so together we could go so much further instead of questioning, can you really do that? I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, totally, totally. And the more seat time you put in, the more you're gonna feel at one with the machine. And what I love about enduro is that it's really a limitless sport. Like you can continuously always strive to improve on your technique and your skill level. It's like, I mean, um, what's the expression? Reach for the stars. I mean, it gives you that platform, and it's limitless. Really, there's a never ending growth that comes with it. Really, love it.
Yeah.
That that's
Yeah.
that's why that's why I do it. That's why I do it. Really, it's for that.
Exactly. And I'm going to ask you this question because I'm always getting asked that in the podcast interviews. And so, what is it like for a woman to be in a male dominated sport?
That's such a good question. So pre illness, I had this thing where I wanted to compete against the boys. I wanted to ride with the boys and show them boys that I could do it too. So I sort of had that, that ego, that undertone, um, when I first started out into the sport. And I think that's sort of the reasons why I went into the mining industry as well. I wanted to, go put my hard hat on, my headlamp, and go underground and work with the boys underground. So I sort of had that little undertone in me, I guess you could call it. And now I totally see it from a different perspective. I obviously don't do it because I'm trying to prove myself. And I'm trying to prove that girls can do it better than boys. Absolutely not. I think now I see it from a more of a motivational perspective. Like men definitely have it easier than us. They just do. They're bigger, they're taller, they're stronger. They definitely have more balls. They just have more balls. They're just way more ballsy than we are. So they will progress. They will progress faster. That's just the nature of it. And it just gives me that inspiration, that motivation that, instead of being like, well, they have it easier, instead I'm like, hey, I just need to work harder. Let's do this. It sort of gives me that motivation. And we're definitely just as capable. We just require a little bit more work, and we sort of do things a little bit differently. Like there's me and my husband, we ride together all the time. He has a totally different way of tackling an obstacle. And from his freestyle motocross background, he used to, jump a 9 foot ramp, do a Cordova midair, and then land to dirt. Like he's got so much, like he's fearless, right? And I'm obviously not that way. I'm more of a precise kind of rider, so I use my technique a lot. That there is a downfall to that because sometimes I am scared to try something that's out of my comfort zone. Um, but as women, we're definitely more meticulous. Generally speaking, it doesn't apply to every woman, but just generally speaking, we're more timid, and there's nothing wrong with that. We just tackle it. We tackle the problems maybe in a different way. And yes, we may not progress as fast as men, and we're never going to like compete. Like, let's say if you look at the top hard enduro guys, like there are no women that even, you know, compare to them in terms of like skill level and what they can do on a motorcycle. It is what it is. But I mean, it doesn't matter because I'm not doing it for that reason. it's all
Yeah.
about giving it your all, and it's the process. It's enjoying the process, and for some it'll take longer than others to learn, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm definitely takes me a little bit longer. I'm more of a timid rider, and it is what it is. I won't beat myself up for that. I love, going back to your question, I love riding with guys because I'm at a level where I can rip and keep up to almost, I'd say, most men now. I'm at a level that I can do that. It's fun. I love going out with guys. They're straight shooters, you know, no drama, and we just ride. It's fun. So
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. But funny enough, for me, when I started motorsports, it was not because of competition, but because of absence of competition for me. I knew that me and the guys were totally on different levels. So there was no point of competing or trying to compare. And it was always going to different levels. I perceived that biological difference. And I knew that my sense of self-preservation was through the roof. I couldn't be very fast, but I did it for the joy and for the enjoyment and for the community. That those are the aspects that drew me to the sport, and still to this day, that's what I enjoyed the most. The fan, because guys have more fun for sure. They're able to. They are just they attack sports with much more
yes.
abandon. And I love that because that inspires you, and you can do much more following someone who just going at things crazy.
Yes.
And that's what I love about other sports, and especially the dirt biking sport. Is just there's abundance of creativity in this very fun and masculine way. And
Yes.
I find it actually easier to participate in than if it was competition among the women themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And that's something I think I've always struggled with, that competition aspect, and especially with other women, you know, comparing ourselves. And now with social media, it's like in your face every day. So it's been quite interesting. And I know, like, my husband's not on social media. And he tells me all the time, like, you know, because sometimes I make a big deal out of it, you know. It's like, Rose, just it's just social media, you know. But times have changed quite a bit. Now podium doesn't necessarily mean you know, now it's your social media presence, right? It's changed quite a bit. So if I want to do something later on in the future with my hobby, and maybe expand beyond, and maybe turn it into some little side hustle, I need to be on social media. And that's why I'm on social media. There's other reasons too. But it's hard, because it's a hard pill for me to swallow, because you don't necessarily need to be good at it. But if you have a social media presence, that's so talent is not necessarily key these days. It's more how you market yourself on social media. So that's been a massive change for me, I guess, that I've had to adapt to, because I was doing it before social media. And it's honestly, it's been a difficult one. And yeah.
Oh yeah, tell me about it. The social media discussion could be another 3 hours
Oh, it can.
podcast in itself.
Yeah.
That's sports and social media. Yes, it's a totally brand new world, and we are learning as we go, essentially.
Yeah.
And what I heard from you and for myself personally, it's how do we stay true to ourselves, most aligned with our purpose, and still participate in this new
Yes.
developing world of internet. It's all very
Yes.
new, very difficult. but it's worth it. It's just like riding endurance. It's both of those things. You're going to fail. You're not going to, it's something's not going to work, but you still keep trying because there is reason behind it.
Yes.
And so in closing, what would be your message for other women if they wanted to get into bikes, or they felt that they are too shy to get into it, or guys, whoever? What's your message in general?
Oh, I say just do it. There's something in this sport for everyone, whether you're a very, very timid rider or you're like a wild adrenaline junkie. It has something for everyone, and it doesn't need to be expensive when you're just starting out, although you'll quickly get hooked and it'll turn into an expensive hobby. So just note that, but it doesn't need to be expensive just to get yourself started. I highly recommend finding a guru, someone to coach you throughout the whole process. I'm lucky I have my husband, Jeremy. He's a much more skilled rider than I am. So every day I work with him, and I can work on my skills with him and my mindset as well. So if you can find somebody that can sort of help you, especially getting started, that's definitely key. So get started, find yourself a good coach or a mentor, and just have fun. Like for the first 5 years, just have fun. It's really limitless. Yeah, it's an amazing sport.
Yeah, I totally agree. And after doing a bunch of these interviews and asking this question, everybody answering the same way, just do it. I just did it. My husband was able to find a couple of bikes, and he also kind of knows the sport. So I've been cutting the trail around our house because we have a little bit of bush. So
Good.
I've been chopping trees, and we've been clearing a little bit, because what it does for me is that it allows me to do this moving meditation in a short amount of time. So I get off work, and for half an hour, I could be doing loops around the house, through the bush, and getting into that mind state. And it doesn't have to be challenging, doesn't have to be difficult. Just doing that allows me to clear my mind so much faster. Running and jogging also works, and workout helps as well. But this is different. It's a meditation. It's a moving meditation. That's why I keep talking about that. It's just that. So thank you very much for this interview, Rose. This was amazing. And the insights that you have provided, they are so spot on. I hope the listeners really enjoyed and got a lot of value out of it. And if you are somebody who is interested in bikes, yes, you just got to do it. You just got to try it. Give it a try. If you've never ridden dirt bikes before, you'll be amazed how much fun it is. And if you're riding now, just keep doing it, because there is meaning behind it. There is purpose. We're not just doing it because we're bored. We're doing it because our souls are evolving when we're doing it.
Absolutely.
So that is kind of my message. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.